This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month.
This podcast is an unscripted, unedited conversation about true crime. We take the cases very seriously, but I don't take myself seriously at all, and neither should you. Welcome to Wife of Crime.
So Russ, on our show we talk a lot about serial killers. And we analyze their psyche and try to figure out why they do what they do. Have we ever stopped and thought about the possibility that maybe some of them don't want to be doing this? Maybe some of them hate the evil things they do, but don't know how to stop. Or maybe they're all just diabolical psychopaths. This is the case of the Weepy Voice serial killer. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wife of Crime, a true crime podcast where I tell my husband Russ all my favorite true crime stories, and he reacts to them.
I do my best.
You do a great job. People love you. You are kind of the favorite of the show.
Except for the people that actually hate me. And Jess just rolled her eyes and made a pucker, like, kissy face with her lips while she was rolling her eyes. That was mad weird. Hate is gonna hate, you know?
Whatever. Well,
hashtag just a hater.
People love you. And, well, some people do hate you. You're very polarizing. Some people love you, some people hate you. But the people who've been around a long time, they really like you.
Well, what happens is a lot of people in the beginning hate me, but then I grow on them.
Yeah, you
like
do.
The mold. Like a lot of our reviews say, I'm mold.
It's true. I think people just are taken aback a little bit by your thought process and some of the weird shit you say.
That's true. Well, this one reminds me, because I said I was going to do, I say I'm going to do a lot of things, and I don't do it. I only do it once on the podcast. But I said I was going to do reviews of the week, and you telling me how people like me or hate me or whatever made me think of this.
Okay.
So this one says, it's 5 stars from BunLover18. Right off the bat, I love Jest. Russ, not so much. But it didn't take long for him to win me over by making fun of pieces of shit and killing it in the profiling game. I love how real and relatable this couple is. Also, I adore how Jess laughs at Russ. I just want to be their friend and play Dateline drinking games. Hashtag vote for us. Hashtag he's for us. Hashtag stay fit, stay alive. Hashtag not me, not today.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah, so there's a lot of them like that.
Yeah, there is. There is. And you know what? There is a lot of people out here that love our podcast, and we're getting so many good reviews and so much support, and we really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback as usual. If you haven't, go to whatever platform you listen to and rate us, or if you can't, share it or something. Tell your mom or something that
help us grow. Tell people about us so we can do podcasting for a living and never work again. And maybe we'll buy a van and live van life and travel around the country and go up to Canada and stay in all the national parks, and we'll podcast the entire time and hopefully not get murdered. That sounds like an ideal life.
That's never going to happen. We're just going to keep going to work and then on our time off do some podcasts.
True. So I have to say I'm sorry. I don't know if it's a totally sorry, maybe sorry, not so sorry, but last week, we got a little tipsy on a Sunday night, and I ended up going live. We recorded our Q&A for the Patreon, and I was drinking champagne. And unfortunately for me, when I drink champagne, which I don't do very often, I tend to black out and get very drunk. And I drank the whole bottle by myself because the Q&A episode was really fun for me to do, and I really enjoyed it.
She really loves the Q&A, and she kept saying, come on, Russ, we got to do the Q&A. We got to do the Q&A. I'm like, we'll get to it when we get to it. I'm watching TV.
Yeah, no, I loved it.
She loved it. I think because, like most women, you like talking about yourself.
Well, I drank a little too much champagne, and then I went live on the Wife of Crime Pod Instagram, and there were about 20-something people who were formally introduced to Drunk Jess, and I barely remember any of it, and Russ told me about it the next morning, and I was super humiliated. So thank you guys for all your nice comments. Because I was really embarrassed.
Yeah, she was like dancing in front of the TV, and then like, I wasn't ready for all that. It was a terrible video. She just had her phone at the TV, shaking it up and down.
Well, I had a lot of fun. I was having a great time, apparently. But yeah, so we recorded that Q&A episode, and I had a good time with it. Our Patreon is doing really good, and we have some shout outs for our patrons. And
all
Russ,
right.
You're going to do the honors.
Yeah, guys, so I'm going to shout out our new Patreons for this week. Appreciate you guys as always. And they are, I can't see the damn paper. All right, there it goes. Sharonda, Tanya, Monique, Elizabeth, Anita, Diana, and Gabe. Thank you guys.
Except it's Chandra.
What'd I say?
Sharandra. I don't know. You messed it up, but it's Chandra.
Chandra.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
So with Patreon now, we've gotten to the point where we're going to have ads sometimes on the episodes. And now on Patreon at all levels, even the lowest level, which is a $2 level, you can get ad-free episodes. So if you hate commercials, or if you just want to support us, go check out the Patreon. And if you don't want to do that, then just share it and just say what's up.
Yeah, exactly. Sharing our podcast on social media and just even telling people about it helps us grow so much. So if you're not into the Patreon thing, totally understandable, but at least tell somebody that you like us and
but
get them to listen.
Don't tell like sensitive people that'll give me a 1-star. Or what you could probably do would be dope too. If someone doesn't listen to podcasts, just grab their phone, open their iTunes, and just rate us 5 stars and give them their phone back. That'd be pretty dope too.
That would be dope.
Yeah, just do that.
Everyone can play their part in helping Wife of Crime blow up. All right. So that's all our stuff for today. Our stuff is done.
That wasn't so bad. Tonight I could get into the story. Jess is having a hard time segueing into every session. I could see her like, oh, what's next?
Well, I have a question for you. Have you ever compulsively done something over and over, knowing you shouldn't, but also not stopping yourself?
Masturbating?
Oh, don't talk about that.
When you're a kid, they say, don't do that.
Okay, don't talk about that. That's not what I was talking about. Jeez.
That might be edited.
Yeah, maybe. So have you ever, answer the question, have you ever?
Sometimes I'm like, I shouldn't drink that beer. And then I'm like, just give me another one anyway. and then I just keep drinking them.
Well, this is small and dumb, but I bite my nails. It's a disgusting habit. I've done it since I was a kid. I always am worse with it during stressful times or stressful events in my life. And I want to stop. I really do. But I just can't. I want to never do it again and put effort into never doing it again, but I just don't. And instead, anytime I get super stressed or anxious, I bite my nails and then I regret it later.
Yeah, and Jess spends like $50 to do them damn nails. You can't be, that's like eating $50. That's a lot of, that's an expensive meal. I forgot. Cheers to you guys. To everybody, Patreons and sharing and taking your friend's phone and rating us.
We talk a lot about serial killers on this show. We try to understand their minds. We dive into their past and their psyche, and we try to rationalize how they can be so evil and calculated. But do we ever stop to consider that maybe there are serial killers who know what they're doing is wrong and want to stop doing it? That maybe in some cases, even something as horrible as killing can be a compulsion that is hard to control, kind of like biting my nails. I'm not saying this to justify any actions, but more to analyze the possibility that the human condition has many layers. So in the case I'm telling you today, we're talking about a serial killer who claimed he wanted so badly to stop killing, but he couldn't. I'm curious to hear your opinion, Russ. I'm wondering if you will believe him or if you think it was all an act.
It sounds like a lot of bullshit already.
Are you ready?
Yeah, man.
So in the early 80s, there was a killer on the loose in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. He left no physical evidence at the scene, which made it tough to investigate his crimes. What police knew is he was targeting young women who were alone and that he would frequently call the police department and cry and beg to be stopped. On New Year's Eve in 1980, a 21-year-old college student named Karen Potak was out celebrating the holiday with her sister on University Avenue in the Twin Cities. So I didn't know this, but Minneapolis and St. Paul are the Twin Cities. I've always heard the term Twin City, but I didn't know what it was. It's Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they're both in Minnesota. And I think one of them's the capital, but they call it Twin Cities.
Oh.
So University Avenue stretches through both cities. So it was extremely cold that night, and around 1 a.m., in the bustle of the celebration of New Year's Eve, Karen got separated from her sister and ended up wandering off down the street in the direction toward her home. She was probably drinking champagne. She was probably drunk like I was last week, and she was maybe blacked out. Who knows? It might happen to others.
That always reminds me of like the National Geographic, when the gazelle, the wounded, is straying from the pack, and the predator always picks off the lone person that's weak.
Yeah, so she was intoxicated and kind of dragging herself home, and that's the last time anyone saw her, was walking away from the bar that she was at with her sisters. At approximately 3 a.m., police received this phone call.
Yes, please, this is an emergency. Please send a squad to Pierce Butler Road, Molenberg Manufacturing Company, machine shop. Please, there's an ambulance too. There's a girl hurt there.
Can you tell me what happened to her?
Just hurry, she's laying on the ground in the back by the railroad tracks, by the edge here. Hurry.
What's the address?
I don't know.
Who are you?
Okay, what are your initial thoughts?
I was thinking, he's doing the voice that I do when I mimic you.
Oh, God. He really is. I didn't even think about that. So you think of me as this whiny person, weepy voice.
That, or like a bossy person with a whiny voice.
Well, really, though, what were your initial thoughts besides that? Does it sound like he's hysterical, or does it sound like it's... Initially, do you think it sounds like an act?
I think he's trying to disguise his voice so he's not recognized. I don't hear any crying there.
Oh, okay. Well, police immediately responded to the call, and they find Karen Potak lying in the snow right by the railroad tracks, just like the Weepy Voice man said. She was naked and badly beaten in the face and the head with a tire iron.
Damn.
Police at the scene said her skull was open and her actual brain was exposed. But miraculously, she was still alive. She was rushed to the hospital, and although she did survive, she unfortunately suffered irreparable neurological damage, and she had no memory of the events or who did this to her. There were no witnesses, no physical evidence, so sadly her case went cold.
Was she able to, like, remember who she is? Like, did she have any memory?
Yeah, she did, but she did have cognitive, like, issues for the rest of her life.
What's cognitive issues?
Like brain issues. She like
because I'm very forgetful. But I had a brain injury. Well, I don't know if I had a brain injury. I cracked my skull open, but they didn't check my brain.
Russ, you definitely had a brain injury. It's called a traumatic brain injury. We talked about it in a previous episode. You had a TBI. Your skull was fractured.
Yeah, but it might not have messed up my brain.
But your brain, 100% in your skull, with the impact of your accident, your brain moved inside of your skull and probably got hit. Like it hit the inside of your skull. The brain is soft. It's a tissue. So when it came to her, she ended up having, issues for the rest of her life. And neurological issues can be anything from having after a stroke, people have a hard time moving their body. They have a hard time remembering things. Sometimes they can't speak correctly. So I don't know the exact things, but I know that she had damage for the rest of her life.
And I got pretty lucky.
You did get lucky. So her case goes cold because there's no physical evidence and no witnesses, and she doesn't remember anything. 6 months later, in June of 1981, police receive this phone call.
Oh, you find me? I just stabbed somebody with an ice pick. I can't stop myself. I keep killing somebody.
So he says, I just stabbed somebody with an ice pick. You heard that?
Yeah,
it's hard to understand what he says.
I heard him. I didn't hear the ice pick. I heard the stab part.
Mm-hmm.
He's just... Nah, he wants attention. And this is him letting someone recognize that he actually committed these crimes. He wanted someone to know it was him, whether or not they definitely know it was him as the person who did it. But now there's a little recognition for the work he's done. Hashtag, you've been profiled.
Well, a day or so later, a group of boys were playing football in a field near an abandoned construction site where they were building a new freeway. One of the boys threw the ball really far, and it ended up going back into a wooded area. So another boy had to go and find it. What he found, however, was the body of a young woman. The teenage boys were terrified. They ran home, and their parents called police right away. The woman had no identification on her. She was stabbed multiple times in the chest and abdomen, 61 times to be exact.
I feel like you can't even stab someone 60 times because your arm would be too tired.
Well, she was stabbed 61 times.
I don't have that kind of stamina to move my arm.
Well, the medical examiner determined that the weapon used was an ice pick. During the autopsy, the medical examiner discovered a key in her pants pocket. The key was to a bus locker at the Greyhound bus station in St. Paul. Police went to the locker and discovered the belongings of this young girl. Her name was Kimberly Compton. She was 18 years old. She just finished high school in Wisconsin and decided to take a trip to St. Paul to visit her Aunt Sherry.
Man.
The medical examiner and investigators were able to retrace Kimberly's steps by using evidence found, get this, in her own stomach.
Huh?
So the food she had eaten that day was undigested. It was so well preserved in her stomach because
Must have been McDonald's because that doesn't dissolve.
No, it wasn't McDonald's.
And I love McDonald's.
But it was so well preserved in her stomach that they saw that her last meal was beef and French fries.
McDonald's.
And right across the street from the bus station was a restaurant called Mickey's, and their specialty was barbecue beef and fries. So the investigators determined that Kimberly got off the bus. She was probably hungry.
Mm-hmm.
She decided, I don't feel like carrying these bags around. Let me lock them in a locker. Put her bags in a locker, walked across the street to Mickey's and grabbed something to eat. And while she was there, she didn't even realize someone was watching her. And then she was taken right after.
A reoccurring theme seems like women shouldn't travel alone.
Well, yeah, we talked about that in our episode
yesterday when we recorded the Patreon thing.
Yeah, for Elisa Lamb.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that was the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah.
But a woman traveling alone, I don't know the percentages, but there's a much higher percentage that you're going to be bothered than me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it's a shame.
It is, but
it sucks.
You have to take precautions to know where you're going to be safe and where you're not going to be safe, and stay around a lot of people, and carry mace and pepper spray, and just take all these precautions to reduce your risk of getting hurt, kidnapped, or, I know.
It's really sad, though, because, she's just going to visit her aunt. She took a Greyhound. People do that all the time. I used to take the Bolt bus from New York City to Baltimore to visit my family all the time. I would go like every 3 months. And it's just a shame. She just took a Greyhound bus to visit her aunt, walked across the street to get some food, and then she got taken.
Yeah, I wonder how she got taken. Like, was there anyone around?
No, there were no eyewitnesses, no physical evidence.
Then where did he take her from? Like, we don't know.
We don't
Maybe
know.
he tells. Like, was she in the back of the restaurant and you pulled her out, but how do you keep her from screaming?
Yeah, we don't know.
They should have asked him. He told people he didn't want to do it, so obviously wanted detention.
Well, at this point, we don't know how she was taken. There were no witnesses, no physical evidence, nothing to point to the perpetrator. Just another bizarre phone call. Another one they received a couple days later.
Don't talk, just listen. I'm sorry what I did to Compton. I couldn't help it. Don't know why I had to stab her. I am so upset about it. I keep getting drunk every night. I can't believe it. It's just like a big dream. I can't think of being locked up. If I get locked up, I'll kill myself. I'd rather kill myself than get locked up. I'll try not to kill anybody else.
So that one was a little hard to hear, but he said he gets drunk every day when he thinks about it. And then he said, I can't get locked up or I'll kill myself. I'll kill myself if I get locked up.
I didn't hear crying there either. It almost sounded like a comedy skit voice. Like the dude from last time I quoted this show, I got called racist. But the dude from Mad TV that's like, look what I could do.
Yeah.
Like he was doing that voice.
You don't hear him crying.
And the one
though?
that I got called racist, for people probably wondering, I was mimicking, what is the one? She looked like a man?
Yeah, what's it called?
Miss Lim? Is that it?
No, Miss Swan.
Miss Swan. Why did I say
Swan.
Lim? That's our property manager's name.
Yeah, Miss Swan.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that. Miss Swan.
Yeah, so, I mean, so you don't hear crying. I do. I hear crying. I hear, like, I don't know if it's legitimate or, I'm not going to say right now what I feel about the crying, but at this point, from what I've heard, I don't know if it's definitely crying tears, but I hear whining and crying and like he's trying to sound sad.
The voice just sounds very airy to me, like some podcast host voice. I forgot the one.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, she had a good podcast. Some true crime joint.
Oh, you're thinking of Criminal.
Yeah, her voice is super airy.
Phoebe Judge.
Hi.
I'm Phoebe Judge.
She sounds kind of hot,
and
though.
This is Criminal. So the police decided at this point, with no leads and lack of evidence, they would release a portion of the phone call to the public, with hopes that someone would recognize his voice.
Who's going to say, I know that voice?
Well, unfortunately, they had way too many people thinking they knew who it was, and they were inundated with leads, but they were all leads that led nowhere. 6 months go by, and there's no solid leads. Kimberly Compton's case goes cold. Last year, Save More Money was the most popular New Year's resolution in America. Clearly, a lot of us feel like our money is slipping through our fingers. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not the best saver, and I don't know much about investing until I started saving and investing with Acorns. Turns out you don't have to be an expert at all because Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. And I always thought that when people say, ooh, I invest in stocks, that they had a ton of money or something. Well, you don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can literally start with $5. And you know you guys are spending that at Starbucks on these fancy lattes. So skip the coffee and invest with Acorns. You don't even need a ton of time. Like you can just sign up and start investing within 5 minutes. Head over to acorns.com/wifeofcrime or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. That's acorns.com/wifeofcrime. So I want to take a quick second to tell you guys about our sponsor today, Podcorn. You know, we've been doing this podcast for about a year and a half now, and it takes a lot of work. And I know a lot of you are in the same boat. We all have these creative ventures that we go on, and we don't realize how much time it actually takes up in our week. It can be really difficult to find sponsorship opportunities. This is where Podcorn comes in. Podcorn is a website that hooks advertisers with independent podcasters. It's free to sign up and it's really super simple. All you do is find an advertiser that you want to advertise on your show. You send them a proposal and your fee. And if they decide to pick you, you make an ad and run it. It's really that easy. And then you get paid for it. It gives you all the creative control and allows you to pick who you want to advertise on your show. And it just keeps the process super simple. Check our show notes for the link, podcorn.com. Okay, back to the story. In August of 1982, in Minneapolis, the body of another woman was found. This was a 40-year-old woman named Barbara Simons. And like clockwork, 2 days after the discovery, police receive a phone call.
Fire emergency.
Please don't talk, just listen. I'm sorry I killed that girl. I stabbed her 40 times. Kimberly Compton was the first one. Oh, my safe. I don't know what's the matter with me. I'm sick. I'm going to kill myself, I think.
Where are you?
I'm just going to... If somebody dies with a red shirt on, it's me. I killed both of you. I'm sorry. I'll never make it to heaven.
So now the police departments compiled all the calls that they got, because it's like multiple jurisdictions working on this case, because they're all getting phone calls, but he's murdering people in different jurisdictions. So they compile the calls and they have a voice expert come and analyze them. And it's determined that all the calls were made by the same person.
That's tough to really say, man. Unless you have a computer. I bet, like, in court, how does that even hold up?
You can't tell that that's the same person talking?
I don't know, but it could be someone else that knows how to do a dumbass. Oh, I did it too. Like, it could have been.
But, I mean, how is a different person going to have the same idea to call? Like, you know what I'm saying?
That's probably the best evidence and the best point of the whole thing. The voice, like, anybody could do a stupid little Mickey Mouse voice or whatever.
Well, the voice expert that they brought in determined that the voice was the same person. And it was determined by all of these jurisdictions that there's definitely a serial killer on the loose in the Twin Cities targeting women. The investigators wanted to try and trace back Barbara's last steps on the night of her death. So they found out that Barbara was at a bar earlier in the night on a date. The bar was called the Hexagon. And according to the waitress, she was on this date with this guy, and the waitress saw the two of them dancing and laughing and having a good time. And then she eventually saw them leave together.
I don't think he was the date. He doesn't sound like a dancing type of dude.
No, apparently he was the date.
Oh, he was dancing?
She went on a date with him. Yeah, which is scary. You go on a date with a serial killer, that's super scary.
Like, dance with me.
I don't think he talks like that all the time.
I bet you that's like his little sexy voice.
Anyway, so the police decided to have some of the bar staff come down to the police station and go through a bunch of mug shots and see if they could pick out the perpetrator. So they went through 169 mug shots, and the staff picked none of them, which showed police that they could eliminate any other suspect besides their number one suspect. And at this point, their number one suspect was a guy named Paul Stephani. Paul Stephani was a 37-year-old man who police had known about. They'd come in contact with him because he had a previous assault charge. I don't know much about the assault charge, but I just know he had an assault charge in his past.
Who doesn't have an assault charge?
A lot of people, Russ. I don't have an assault charge.
Well,
and I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't have assault charges.
If you lived in the Bronx, you assaulted someone. You had to, because, like, that's how you survive.
Well,
assault or be assaulted.
Assault or be assaulted.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So Paul had an assault charge, and he also had an extensive psychiatric history. He first came on their radar, though, when the police connected the fact that he was fired from his job in 1977 from the Mulberry manufacturing plant, which is the same place the first victim Karen Potak was found. They decided to trail Stephani for some time. One night, the surveillance team that was trailing him lost sight of him. So they kind of did a shitty job that night because they lost him.
It's funny. You could be on the highway and a car could just be behind you for like 2 exits. And I'm like, is this guy following me?
It's true.
I like switch lanes and stuff. I'm like such a weirdo.
No, I've thought that before though. Like, why is this person going the same place I'm going?
Probably 'cause they're just going home and it's in the same direction.
Probably.
We live in a city with millions of people.
I know. Well, they lost sight of him. And Paul ended up in a red light district area of town.
Does red light district mean like a hookah spot?
Yeah, it's where the prostitutes are.
Okay, good times.
And he
just kidding. I don't like prostitutes, but if you do, and a prostitute likes you, good for you guys.
Nice. So he decided to pick up a prostitute, and her name is Denise Williams. He takes her to his apartment, pays for sex, and then gets back in the car and says he's going to take her back to the street that he picked her up on. I wish I could play the interview for you with Denise Williams because she is an OG. Like her interview kind of cracked me up because you can just tell she's a tough lady because she's been through a lot of shit. And she talks about this night and what went down with him. So
she didn't die, obviously.
She didn't die, but I can't play the interview, unfortunately, because of copyright things. I'm not allowed to put it on here.
But what you could do is share the link somewhere, and then they could see it.
Yeah, I could see if I could find a link. I only heard her interview on another podcast, and I can't share it on here.
All right, well, folks, it looks like you guys are going to have to research this yourself and try to find it. What's her name?
Denise Williams.
Check out Denise Williams' interview, and
it's really good.
In my mind, she looks like the hooker from My Name is Earl. You ever see that?
Oh, yeah. Such a good show.
Yeah, that's such a good show. If you didn't see that, it's a good... Check it out. I'm not going to go into all that.
So, he agreed to take her back to the street that he picked her up on. As they're driving, Denise realizes that they're heading in the wrong direction. When she asks him about this, he claims that he's taking a shortcut. She thinks to herself, this dude is about to try something. He's about to do something to me. I don't have a weapon. I don't have any way to defend myself. What am I going to do?
I thought all prostitutes had weapons because...
I mean, I would think so too with what they...
You're in a vulnerable situation at all times.
Yeah, I would feel like you should carry a knife or something, but she didn't have
But then if you're butt naked, where are you going to hide the knife?
I don't know, in your bag or something maybe.
I don't know.
But she's starting to think, okay, this dude's about to act up. I need to figure out how am I going to defend myself. And then she looks down and she sees there's a bottle on the floor between her legs. She picked it up and held it in her hand because she planned on hitting him with it if he tried anything. Her suspicions were right. He turned down a dead-end road with no one else around. He stabs her in the stomach with a screwdriver.
Oh.
But she fought back. She hit him in the head with the bottle, and he was kind of on top of her while she's in the passenger seat. She hit him in the head, and he starts bleeding everywhere. Blood's going crazy. It's getting in his eye. It's all over her. She somehow manages to open the door.
And he's like, oh, there is blood on my face.
Well, she somehow manages to open the door and slide out onto the ground, but he climbs out really fast and gets on top of her and continues to stab her.
Wow.
And she screams as loud as she can. And luckily, a man who lived in the area right down the street heard the screaming and came out of his house. He sees a man on top of a woman in the middle of the street, and he runs over there to try to help her. Paul gets up, and he starts going after the guy now.
Oh.
With the screwdriver.
That's why a lot of times I mind my business.
Yeah, but not in this situation. You couldn't watch a woman being stabbed and not try to do something to help her.
But if the person stabbing her is fast and stronger than you, now it's just 2 people stabbed.
Well, he felt outnumbered once the guy came and he got off of her. He went after the guy for a second with the screwdriver, but he didn't end up stabbing him.
I would probably help too, but I would also be like, damn, I should have minded my business. I could have woke up dead.
Well, it scares him off, and Paul runs back in his car and speeds away. Denise is taken to the hospital, and she has 15 puncture wounds in her abdomen, her head, her legs, She ended up having a punctured lung and liver.
Damn.
She goes immediately into surgery for emergency surgery, but she lives. Now, Paul, he leaves the scene.
Good for her. A prostitute with health insurance.
She doesn't have health insurance.
But she got surgery.
It doesn't matter. You can get surgery without health insurance.
I didn't know that. I thought they just let you die.
No, Russ.
Like, it's like a mechanic. If you go there and you're like, oh, my car's not starting, you got to change the alternator. They're like, oh, you don't got no money, you don't get it.
No, it doesn't work like that. We have to treat every single person that comes through that hospital door, whether they have insurance or not.
I thought, like, up to a certain point, they'll give you, like, a little bit of medicine, but I didn't think they're going to give you, like, an expensive surgery.
No. Like, anyone that comes through the door, we have to save their life. It's our duty to save them, no matter what.
Oh, okay.
So, Paul leaves the scene, and then he makes this phone call.
We need an ambulance.
Where?
1505 Westminster.
1505
Yes.
Westminster. What's the problem?
I'm all cut up. I got beat up.
What's your apartment number?
208. I'm bleeding.
208. Where are you bleeding from?
From my arm, my face, my head.
So now he didn't sound very weepy then. He sounded like a normal, regular voice.
Kinda.
But-
It's still kind of high-pitchy.
Yeah, you can still tell it's his voice, but he's not crying his eyes out anymore. So police head straight to the hospital, and they ask Denise if she can identify her attacker. And she said, yeah. So she picked his face out of a mugshot, like a group of mugshots. She picked his mugshot out of the group. Police arrest him and charge him with attempted murder. They don't yet tell him that they're trying to connect him to the other attacks and murders. While in the interrogation room, they tried to stay quiet about all the other cases, but after a few hours, the detective opens a file with photos of the other women. Paul Stephani says, "You're not going to pin those on me." Paul is held in jail awaiting trial, and meanwhile, the case is being built against him by the prosecutor, who's trying to connect him to all these other crimes. Now, the prosecutor has to prove to the jury that the weepy phone calls from the other cases is the same voice of the phone call that was made after the Denise Williams attack where he gave his address.
How do you do that unless you make him cry and talk at the same time?
So what they did was they gave the jury headphones and they played the weepy voice, the first phone call, and then they played the phone call where he asked for the ambulance. And they did this with each weepy voice phone call. They would play the normal talking voice call after so that the jury can compare them.
I wonder what they called it. Like, all right, now this is the crybaby voice.
I don't know if they called it the weepy voice. I don't know when he got the name the Weepy Voice Killer.
Or this is him doing his little bitch-ass voice.
So, expert witnesses at the trial couldn't say for 100% certainty that the voice was the same person.
Especially if you're jury, you're asking me to be a voice analysis expert. Like, bro, can you just figure this out? You guys are the government. Like, what the fuck?
Well, yeah, but I'm saying the experts that they brought on as witnesses, because they brought expert witnesses in.
So they brought expert witnesses, but they expected the jury to be able to figure it out when an expert couldn't.
Yeah, they wanted the jury to hear.
That sounds really smart. I got it now. Shout out to the government.
Well, there was one witness that could confirm that it was the same voice. Paul Stephani's sister. She listened to the tapes and tearfully confirmed on the stand that the voice was in fact her brother Paul.
That's tough telling
And
on your brother.
The jury believed her.
I'd believe her too, I think. But that's tough.
It is tough.
I don't know if I'd tell.
I mean, it's hard. That's your brother, but he's also like, I mean,
I probably wouldn't mind my business.
But let's just play devil's advocate for a second. Like, what if he actually is remorseful and sad and feels guilty for all these things he's doing and he does want to stop? She probably believes him that he feels remorseful and is like, okay, the only way you'll stop is if they put you away. So I'm going to help you get put away because you need to stop this. Maybe that's the thought process behind it.
Yeah, he was going to get put away anyway, though.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I'd be like, you know what? He's going to get put away anyway. I'm not going to testify.
Well, her testimony was a big deal. It actually solidified the jury's decision for a lot of jurors.
Damn.
So it was a big deal. So after a 6-week trial.
But what if she takes the stand and all of a sudden she's like, "Hi, I'm his sister." And it's just the family voice.
Stop.
I think it was him.
You should do the rest of the podcast with that voice because you actually do a really good impression of it. So after a 6-week trial, Paul was convicted of murdering Barbara Simmons and given 40 years. But the prosecutor didn't try to convict him of the other murders or attempts. And he said he didn't feel like it was necessary, but this upset a lot of the family members of the other victims because in their mind, they're like, why can't he be held accountable for these other murders? He should be held accountable. I want closure.
But if you go to jail for life, you are being held accountable even if you didn't get convicted for a particular murder. You can kill one person, go to jail for life.
Well, he got 40 years. So it's not, I mean, he probably would be, he was 37 years old, so he was going to be almost 80.
So he might get out when he's like 60.
No, well, I guess.
Because, they cut time off for good time and stuff.
Maybe. So Paul Stephani was raised in an extremely strict religious household. And he had that Christian or Catholic guilt. People who are Catholic, they talk about the Catholic guilt all the time. I don't know if you've ever heard that because you weren't raised Catholic, but...
No, but I was raised by Christian weirdness.
Well, there's this guilt that you carry around, and he was raised in a really strict Christian home, and he carried around this guilt all the time. So after 12 years in prison, he was diagnosed with cancer and decided he wanted to come clean before he died. He called the lead investigator on the crime and asked him to come and talk to him in jail. He proceeded to tell all the details of all the murders, how he conducted each one, why, he chose this girl versus that girl, and how they happened exactly the way they did.
I wonder if he said why he called. Did he really feel remorseful?
Yes. So he claimed...
I think he's full of shit.
He claimed that each time he met any of these women, he had no intention of killing them. And that right away, after he met them and pretty much after being around them for a few minutes, he would kill them and then immediately regret that he just killed them. He tells them that he kept calling the police after each killing because he hated what he did and he wanted them to stop him, but he was too much of a coward to turn himself in because he was too scared to go to jail.
See, I meet a lot of people and I hate them and I never want to see them again after just talking to them for like a second. But it's not like, let me kill him. Just leave.
But obviously, he's mentally ill, Russ. He's obviously not like a regularly normal thinking person. I mean, there's something going on in there. Clearly.
Yeah, I guess.
So he claims that he felt horrible for his crimes and wanted to stop, but he didn't have enough control to do so. So it's interesting, like the legal definition of insanity. Like we know that insanity is a legal term. It's not a diagnosis, right? It's not a medical term.
Yeah, but the same way, like if someone does something, you're like, oh man, he's crazy. It doesn't have to be defined by doctors or nothing. We know what you mean.
Yeah, but I'm just letting you know the definition of insanity in legal terms is being able to tell right from wrong. So he couldn't be considered or couldn't plea, do the insanity plea or be considered insane legally because even though he was diagnosed with multiple psychiatric illnesses and clearly had some psychological stuff going on, he knew everything that he did was wrong and he recognized it. So he couldn't use insanity as a reason. And for that, he ended up spending the rest of his life in jail. And he ended up dying of cancer in jail. And
hopefully he suffered. A lot of these criminals get off easy by dying of cancer.
Cancer's probably rough.
Yeah, but I mean, like, hopefully they could, like, suffer and be lonely in the box or, like, whatever the worst thing that could be done to you is.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess if the cancer's bad, then hopefully like it lasted a long time and made him suffer.
Yeah. You don't think he was remorseful?
Being remorseful for something doesn't mean you're forgiven or you should get away with it.
Okay.
You should still, like...
Just because, so you don't think him reaching out to the police and telling, coming clean about everything was his way of, like, trying to get some redemption?
No. Since he grew up with a little bit of Christian beliefs, that was his way probably of trying to get right with God because he's about to die.
Yeah, so you think it was more of selfish because he
was
was
selfish.
worried about going to heaven.
Yeah, he gets to heaven, he's going to be like, God, I'm so sorry. I cried and called the cops. Didn't you hear me?
I went back and forth with this one, to be honest with you. I definitely see,
you think everyone's nice.
No,
you probably would have been like, but he's so nice.
No, I kind of see.
And you would have woke up dead.
I see why you think this. However, I do believe that there are layers to things. Like, just because I'm not justifying anything he did, but he number one, has a lot of psych problems. Number two, he seemed like he really was regretful of what he did. I don't know for sure if it was compulsive and he couldn't stop. I mean, everyone has the ability to have self-control. And if you really want to stop doing something, you can. So, I don't know.
Feeling bad is like, for example, you're driving, it's dark outside, you hit someone with your car.
Yeah.
Now you're remorseful, you're scared, you don't know how to act, you run away because you don't know what to do. And you're not going to continue to do it. You didn't do it on purpose. You killed someone on purpose. It wasn't a passive kill and you panicked and you were scared. Like, oh no, I can't believe that I'm never going to say anything, but I would never do it again and I'm scared.
Yeah.
His was, I'm going to keep doing it.
All right. You're right. I see. I mean, I see what you're saying. I kind of assumed
you got to see a piece of shit and then you got to say, oh, that's a piece of shit.
It's true. Like before in our older episodes, we said a couple of times, shit always floats to the top.
Yeah, and his shitty ass came to the top and it was him. Like, it wasn't a mistake killing that you tried to hide because you didn't know what to do, or like maybe you killed someone and you, by mistake, who knows what could happen.
No, you're right.
And then you just panic and you don't want to tell anyone because you think you're going to go to jail for murder. That's not what happened. He did it and then did it again. And did it again, and excuse me, I wonder if there was any other murders besides those 3 that he did.
There are people who think that he is also connected to other murders, yes, but it's not been a definitive thing that he definitely was.
You got to stop trying to like give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Like someone dies. Or like they do some terrible shit, but what happened in their childhood? Who gives a fuck what happened 30 years ago? This piece of shit's out here raping and killing people. It doesn't matter what happened.
I know.
String him up by his toes and whip him.
I do give the benefit of the doubt too much.
Yeah, so I mean, according to Jess, we should just let people go. If you had any hard times, I think every serial killer should be let out if he's ever cried as a child.
Stop. That is not what I think. But I just try to look at the whole picture. That's all.
It's a stupid picture.
Well, that was the case of Paul Stephani, the Weepy Voice serial killer.
Yeah, so at least he didn't get a cool name. He had a little bitch-ass name.
All right, well, I hope you guys liked this episode. And remember to check us out on Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram. And Wife of Crime, the Crime Family on Facebook. And wifeofcrime.com. I'll post pictures.
And if you can't get enough of Wife of Crime and there's not enough on these apps, go to Patreon and there's like more content and merch and stuff.
All kinds of fun stuff. All right. Well, have a good one, guys.
Peace.
Bye.